Yes, thank you, Fuad. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And
Alaikum salam, Prof.
it is good afternoon here in Australia, in Melbourne. And
I see.
yeah, good morning to you all.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah,
Good
thank you,
afternoon.
Fuad, and thank you, Brenda, for your kind words about my expertise. I don't claim myself as an expert, and we all experts. That is matter of
You are.
experience, and then we get there. Um, I'm very pleased to be with you all. I know that it is difficult time for everyone, given this COVID-19 crisis, and we all now do everything's online via Zoom or Microsoft Team software. But as we all know that things have changed a lot since we have COVID-19 crisis. So in Australia, like other countries across the world, we deliver our teaching online. So everything's now online, then we all working from home. Our university, and not in all universities in Australia are fully shut down and everybody's working from home. So it's a new experience, as you know, that I like to see people face to face. We all like to see that
Yep.
direction.
Yes. Same here,
But
Prof.
but we have no choice, no.
Yeah.
And I would guess that probably it will become part of our culture. So
Right.
to live with this virus, I don't know for how long, but I don't see it's very short term, will be maybe another 2 years or so. So I really like everyone that you join me in these presentations. I wasn't aware of that many participants. I thought it would be like a seminar, maybe 30, 40. Now I can see 47, including myself.
Right.
So it is really honor for me to be with you on a particular idea about public sector. And as you can see, the title of the presentations is slightly different from the one you had. I deliberately have removed non-profit organizations, and I know that public sector is also non-profit organizations. But when it comes to having a scope of the presentations, non-profit organizations have different focus. But things I would cover during these presentations would also apply to non-profit organizations. So those of you who are involved with any non-profit organization or non-profit accounting research, I think things would definitely be applicable to your understanding or thinking about this issue as a whole. Before I start that, and I like to acknowledge that this presentation is based on my, as Fuad said, I've been in this area for long. So since my academic career, after I finished my master's, I started my PhD at the University of Manchester. That was in the area of public sector accounting. Since that, I have been working on this particular area, especially accounting and organizational change. When I looked at things, either accounting and organizations, I always look at the trend and changes, because changes is very important for reflecting on issues we encounter in our everyday life, and we can learn from past. We can also use our past experience for coming up or any new ideas in future, so that we can change our everyday practices. We can change the world as a whole. So although I'm accounting professor, that my area of research, I would say 90% public sector accounting and financial management. And even within public sector accounting, some of you are familiar with my key area is management accounting. I see management accounting as a broad discipline when it comes to looking into informations that is required by internal management. It's not about external financial reporting focus, it's all about internal information that is needed by managers to make informed decisions for their businesses. So when I decide on management accounting, I tend to look at accounting as a social practice. It's really important. Accounting cannot be seen as an isolated discipline. Accounting is part of the society. Accounting is a part of the community. Accounting is a global phenomenon. So accounting is socially constructed. Everybody in the organizations, outside the organizations, or in the community, they're part of the accounting discipline. Accounting not only provide numbers, accounting also provide non-numbers, non-accounting related issues and figures, which are very important for any organizations, any individual when it comes to making a business or non-business decisions. So I would rather focus on more internal oriented informations, which would be more strategy oriented. I would rather like to see more in the future rather than past, because past is already past, but we can learn from the past, but we need to be more future focused, future oriented, what needs to be done in the future to sustain or to stay in the world of crisis. As we all know that COVID-19 has taught us one lesson, that nothing is certain in the world. We cannot say that everything will be fine tomorrow. So I think that is the great lessons I have learned from COVID, that who knows, who knew about this crisis? No one thought about this crisis. Now it would be a part of our life, as I said in the beginning of my presentations. So businesses, organizations, either in the public sector, private sector, or non-profit organizations, we must make sure that we deal with the unprecedented crisis. We deal with such crisis that we can carry our businesses, which would be very important for us to deliver our services to everyone involved. So it's very important for us to how we can survive and how we can sustain and in this health crisis or economic crisis. So to me, I think accounting plays a significant role in this particular crisis, because accounting, as I said, provides useful information so that people can make plan for future, and people can use these information for making their individuals as well as collective decisions. So as I said at the beginning of my presentation, this presentation is based on my experience as a researcher, as an academic in accounting and public sector management, and also in organizational change. And most of the information I have used here based on various sources, including internet sources and my own publications with my colleagues and other people. So this is the whole idea is to share my ideas with you. As I said, I'm not an expert, and we all are expert here. And if you have any questions, and you can have them in your chat, and once I finish my presentation, I will have a look into chat box. You can start typing your questions, or if you want to ask questions via video or Zoom, then feel free to do it, and then I'll be happy to answer to your questions. And I'd like to know from your side, and I know that Indonesia, I have lots of friends in Indonesia, and then Indonesia is one of the countries who is very upfront in public sector reform, like Malaysia. And so I also have lots of things to learn from your side, and if you have anything to share with me. So again, just to always that I have two screens here. One is my laptop, one is the big screen. So if you see me wandering around, that I have to apologize that. So let me start with my, so what I want to share with you about a few things, and they all relate to public sector reform and public sector financial management. And like I will start off with what do you know about modern public administrations? And although I know that some of you are not from accounting, so I won't make it accounting. I will make it in general from public administration, public financial management, and of course, I would use some of the accounting terms which would be very familiar to everyone, even not in accounting discipline. And then the second bullet point I have here with you to share the new public management reforms. So we had this slogan almost for the last 2 decades. So I would focus on this particular area and to demonstrate how this particular concept has changed the public sector everyday practices. And the hybrid organization, it is also a recent, it is recently brought into public sector accounting research, but the idea is not new. When it comes to hybrid, it's like, you know, it's a, like if you think about public sector, it's all about hybrid organization nowadays. I will also touch on this particular issue. Accountability is one of the fundamental issues in public sector administration. It's all about integrity, moral, ethics, you know, and I'm not sure whether you have been following Australian media coverage for the last couple of weeks, that we had lots of public servants, CEO of Australia Post and even our premiers in a couple of states here. They all face accountability issues, integrity and corruptions, malpractices. So accountability becomes a serious issue for public sector organizations, not only in Australia. It's a global phenomenon. So I would focus heavily on this particular area, how we can handle malpractices, corruptions, and what sort of accountability mechanism should be in place. I cannot say that we can completely remove corruptions. I think it is part of our culture. And I think we cannot remove 100% corruption, but we can manage. We have to manage it. We have to remove it in a way that can be sustainable. And as I said, we cannot eliminate corruption. It will be there. It has been in around the world. It will continue be with us, so we cannot avoid it, but we have to know how to manage that crisis, which is very important for not only for public sector organization, it is also applicable to non-profit organizations, even private sector corporations. So that comes to the idea of public sector governance. What sort of governance mechanism should be in place to manage all those crises? And then the recent focus, which is very recent in Australia and other countries. I know that Malaysia, also Indonesia, also are embarking on this outcome-based approaches to performance management. And I would also focus on this particular issue and share with you some of the experiences from various countries to see whether we can learn from them and introduce and something in our own country or own organizations. And of course, I will end up with my reflections. When I say reflections, what I see about this crisis and what needs to be done, and what are the issues we need to address in this particular space, and then what needs to be done, and who should do what. And I think that needs to be clearly understood, and then we'll have a session for questions. Just my apologies. This is from internet, and I said it should be 03. And I quite like when I Google search this public administration. I quite found this interesting, and it's a kind of diagrams and summarize the whole idea of modern public administrations. That modern public administrations, as you can see, is quietly highlighted very nicely 8 paradigms. And if you look at any public sector organizations, by the way, I think everybody is aware of when I say public sector organization, is public sector by definition is 100% owned and controlled by government. So a public sector could be in many forms, and it's a public sector can be a commercial type public sector, which is owned and controlled by government but run on a commercial basis, and also non-profit public sector and organizations. And when I say public services is like, and government agencies and departments, those provide services to the community. And so in the public sector world, and we have 2 disciplines dominate this public sector. One is public administration, and then from accounting perspective, public sector accounting people, those look into financial aspect of public sector. So public administration people, they think they are the main bodies of public sector organizations, which of course I think makes sense, because they all talk about public administrations, public accountability, public policy, and so when it comes to administration, it's all about how to run the organization as a whole. So when it comes to what sort of information they need, then public sector accounting comes into the field. So I would rather see public administration and public sector accounting, they are both integrated into this framework, and both work in one particular goal, that how to deliver quality services to the community, how to maximize the wealth of the community as a whole. So the whole idea is to have a common goal for everyone, that maximum benefits, and then with less resources, and that's the key focus of public sector administrations. So here, I think it's, as you can see, that 8 elements. One is the new public administrations, and then we have new public management and reinventing government. That is the new term. I think I'm going to share with you. Osborne introduced that instead of new public management, but the whole idea is the same. And you are also familiar with total quality management, and which focuses on everything within the organization and outside the organizations. We have to have a holistic framework in terms of planning, coordinations, and managing and controlling the whole organizations. And so quality or continuous improvement should be part of the organizational and individual culture. So this is also brought into the public sector field, that we need to work into this particular framework, which will focus on continuous improvement. And then we have postmodern public administrations and public choice theory. I think the public choice theory focuses on economic efficiency, and where people use public money, public resources. So they have to make a rational choice when it comes to deciding on a particular government projects or community development projects. The rationale would be economic efficiency, optimal benefits for the people or for the community. And then we have good governance. And the governance has not been an issue in public sector field. Governance, when it comes to governance, it was always been with private sector. What are the various committees, corporation boards and audit committee, and various risk and budget committee. But with the new focus, now public sector organizations also look into this governance, because a good governance is the only way we can achieve our goals, which is the providing quality and maximum benefits to the community. So how we can ensure that we have a good governance in public sector field, that's also very important. Now we have e-governance. The e-governance also now is now become, think about the Zoom presentation. It's a kind of all technology and digital disruptions, and governments now focus on e-governance and all kind of issues nowadays because of digitalizations and Internet of Things, and all kind of new technologies. And so everybody now have access to government informations. So government now tries to make everything transparent to the community, so that we have access to the documents. You don't have to physically go to an organizations in the public sector for any informations. Whenever you need information, you can access to government's various websites and government documents, and you can access to government various committees, and integrity commissions, inquiry, everything. So that also, I'm sure, I think it's Indonesia is no exception, in Australia, and nowadays, and if we have any simple inquiry, like in a Senate committee inquiry, any parliamentary committee inquiry, everything's now live. No one can hide anything. All inquiry they do on live show, and so people cannot hide anything. And as I mentioned before, that for the last couple of weeks we had lots of issues in Australian public sector, spending money without authorizations, and using corporate card for public spending, and also having bonuses without approval of the corporate board, and gifting corporate board members, all kinds of irregularities, and what I would say is the corruptions, I think now everywhere. Now, the committee on Senate committee we have in Australia conducting all those of inquiries, and then asking Premier, even Prime Minister, to say about their things, and when it comes to having those inquiry. So e-governance now, and it becomes part of our culture in the public sector field. Now let me focus on, if you are in public sector, you heard this term before, new public management. And the whole idea started, the new public management started in the UK first, when Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. She initially introduced this new public sector, where public sector should be accountable to their actions to people. So public sector should be competing with private sector. So that's the whole idea, that public sector should be no significant differences in terms of delivering services to the community between public sector and private sector. So that Hood 1995 or 1991, he then coined this term as new public management, and he introduced this idea of new public management, and he came up with these 6 elements of new public management, that That is the first element, as you can see on the screen, the hands-on professional management. And the whole idea is to borrow private sector professionals into the public sector. Traditionally, public sector used to have like, traditional bureaucrats, uh, and public servants, and they came to this field through competitive exams. I'm sure Indonesia has the similar practice. But with this new slogan, new public management, and the whole idea is to borrow private sector expertise, private sector professionalism, and consultancies into the public sector. So idea is to also you adoption of private sector style management, like having a corporate board, having various committees, risk committee, budgeting committees, and then have a corporate type of organization structure, like managing director or chairperson and board members and non-executive board members. And also the benchmarking and competition, and that public sector needs to compete with the private sector for delivering services to the community. So things like competitive tendering, I'm sure I think Indonesia also has similar practice, like, in most Western developed countries, that public sector now compete with private sector to deliver services to the community. So it's a kind of outsourcing. Traditionally, we used to, like in the public sector, used to provide services from in-house. Everything was in-house. Nowadays, most of the time, they use outsourcing, and private sector agencies, they need to apply or they need to compete for tendering or any services. So competitions brought into this field so that we can get quality and services from these service providers. In Australia, we call it purchaser provider arrangements. Like government now becomes so governments become purchasers, and the government agencies now become providers. As you can see, within the same layer of government, we have purchasers, which is the government, and providers, which is the government services. So who are the recipients of those services? The community. So you can see that the relationship is now quite different. And then we have, so benchmarking is also becomes an important part of public sector administration or public sector financial management. That if you think about like hospital sector, nowadays we have in Australia, like other developed countries, and public-private partnership. Like if you are a patient, if you go to a public hospital in Australia, they will ask you one question: do you have a private insurance? If you say yes, and they will ask you, do you like to be treated as a private patient in a public hospital? So it depending on the private insurance coverage, and then people, they can decide on whether they would like to be treated as public patient or private patient. When you want to use as a private patient, you get priority for any emergency surgery because you pay private insurance, but you can get this treatment in the public hospital as well. You can see we have public-private partnership. So this is why governments introduce benchmarking, how public hospitals deliver services to the private patient, and how public hospitals compete with private hospitals. So it's all about benchmarking, not comparing performance within the public sector, but also comparing performance with similar private sector providers. So we have that kind of attitude now in place in Australia, like any other countries, most countries. And then the most important and obvious, and I think as an accounting student that some of you are familiar with accrual accounting, and this is also an introduction a newly introduced idea in the public sector accounting reporting that agencies should follow accrual-based accounting when it comes to preparing financial statements. And when it comes to internal budgeting, uh, public sector agencies also introduce accrual-based budgeting, not only focus on cash, also non-cash expenses and non-cash any other accruals and liabilities and advances. So that also becomes like the current practices in public sector accounting when it comes to deciding on budgeting. And of course, now emphasis on customer focused strategy. Like I can give you one example in the university sector that I'm sure I think is Indonesia could have the similar sort of concept. In Australia and universities, we see our students as a customers because students pay fees upfront like a customer, and then we have to deliver quality services. So students becomes customers. So that's a huge changes in university culture. And guess what? Because they are now our customers, we are now very careful about when we develop our teaching materials and how we deliver our lectures. How we provide services or support to our students. At the end of the day, our performance is based on their satisfaction score. So in most universities in Australia, we have two uh, evaluation score. One is the overall evaluation for subjects quality. Students will score you for quality materials development and quality delivery, and then student satisfaction score on individual teaching, how you deliver your teaching, whether students are happy or satisfied with you, the way you teach, the way you deliver our lectures and seminars and tutorials and workshop. So as you can see, and because of that satisfaction score and evaluation, university use that score when it comes to assessing annual performance. We have three areas for performance rating: teaching, research, and services. And so we have, say, 1 to 5 point scale. Our department has 4.1 minimum score for teaching quality out of maximum 5. As you can see, is very high bar in terms of performance rating. This is all about public sector. This is all about new public management, because universities nowadays in Australia, uh, that we don't get significant amount of funding from government. Our fundings now comes from heavily from students, local students and international students. Australia is significantly dependent on international students. This is why you may have heard that most universities now Australia having job cuts because of no enrollments or low enrollments from international students because of the international border closures. So that's also giving us this kind of signal that we are living in a new world where that public sector agencies need to generate their own resources to survive in the marketplace, as a normal private sector organizations. Then who would also come up with these accountability issues that everyone as an individual or as a collective forum must be held accountable for their own actions or collective actions. So I think it's the whole idea was that individual accountability and collective accountability, and I call it an forum. If you think about a department, say accounting department, every individual, every lecturer, every staff has their own responsibilities, job descriptions. So everybody needs to be held accountable for their own actions and responsibilities. Now, as a department as a whole, so we are a forum we are also held accountable for our own actions to our superiors. So you can see that we have two kinds of accountability. One is an vertical accountability, one is horizontal accountability. So vertical accountability, it relates to accountability between senior executives or junior executives, like seniors and juniors, like in hierarchical relationship. Like if you are head of department, you are reporting to your dean, and the dean reports to the top higher authority like vice chancellors and any other people. On when it comes to horizontal accountability, is all about accountability among peers, among our colleagues. So as an individual, I'm also accountable to my colleagues for my own actions. So it comes to ethics and moral accountability, which I will touch on this issue in detail shortly. Now, as I said, that David Osborne also came up with these lots of ideas, and instead of the word new public management, and he and Ted come up with this idea of reinventing government. So they argue that of course, it's a new public management. We are reinventing our government. That think about the examples I have given you about Australian recent some crisis, accountability crisis. It's all about is reinvention. We never had this attitude before that now government servants or premiers or prime ministers will be held accountable to people publicly. So that was unthinkable. Now, because of this new public management, everything's now reinvented. So they come up with these similar sort of ideas who would talk about new public management. And those three is economy, efficiency, and effectiveness, and also flexibility around government activities and organizational structures, and also, as I mentioned before, individual responsibility and collective responsibility. So they come up with this 10 principles. So I would like to go through each of them because they are very important for our in-depth understanding about the accountability crisis in today's public sector. And those are also important if you would like to embark on new research, new projects, and then you could think about a particular issue, then develop a project. That would be interesting. So like the first principles, Osborne and Ted come up with this catalytic government. Like they argue that it's not about rowing, and it's all about steering. Government should hold the steering, because as you know that when you drive a car, the steering is very important. If you lose your steering, if you are not careful, if you are absent-minded, that you get into an accident. So that's the part of the deal, that government must steer the wheel. And then if the government can do, and then the government can deliver quality services and the community is expected. And then also community-owned government, and it's all about the empowering rather than serving. Think about traditionally, and government has a kind of top-down approach. It's a bureaucratic control, everything decided at the top, everything decided by the government, the community as a whole, just to listen to the government and follow government policy and regulation. Now those days are gone. It's all kinds of empowerment. It's a like bottom-up approach mentality, and this is why I think Ted and Osborne say it's like community-oriented government, that we need to have a community-centric focus. And of course, as I mentioned before, that is all about competitive government. So having competition into the service delivery, and also mission-driven government. And like as I said before, that government agencies also now have a mission, vision statement. If you look at any government website, in Australian government website, any government agency, you will see that each agency has vision, mission, statement, and also strategic goals clearly highlighted in their first page or on the relevant page. And of course, result oriented. Now it's not, we're going to discuss more on shortly. Results oriented government is also talk about funding outcomes, not inputs. And also customer driven, again, and saying community as a customers, and also enterprising government rather than spending. And as I said before, that the government used to just have one kind of slogan, that spend and spend. Nowadays, no, spending is not the issue. Issue is funding, and issue is getting resources. Issue is about to become entrepreneur, that not to spend, also raise money. This is how entrepreneur they do. They set up new businesses with new ideas so that they can raise money, they can improve profitability, they can increase wealth. And also anticipatory government, prevention rather than cure. This is very obvious in a hospital sector in Australia and most countries. Now they spend a lot of money to prevent various diseases, not to spend money just to cure them. Like things about, good example of like cancer. Now, people and government agencies and various organizations, hospitals, they spend billions of dollars, and so that they can come up with new drugs and medicine to prevent those serious diseases. And think about COVID-19, and every country now spending billions of dollars to come up with a new vaccine, so that we can prevent this health crisis in the future, rather than curing, because curing is an expensive strategy. And decentralized governments, from hierarchy to participations and teamwork, is also very important for us to think about teamwork. In a public sector agency, teamwork is now become an everyday's life, that you have to work in a team. So when we teach our students, we teach how to work in a team with various multitask environment. That also becomes part of public sector agency. And market-oriented government is kind of leveraging change through the market. And as I mentioned before, that changes now become part of the every organizational culture, including public sector. And so how to leverage those changes and through the market disciplines, that's also very important for today's public sector organizations. Then these two scholars come up with this, what they call it, new public service. I don't agree with most of them, all ideas, and the first idea, like, is a contradictory with Osborne and Tate, serve rather than steer. So I think it's, I would rather say steering is important. Of course, I think serving is also part of this. Serve citizens, not customers. Seek the public interest. I think that's also very important for us. So everything public servants do, they must do it for public interest, not about an individual's interest. It's everything they do, we think about public interest. If we deliver our subject to our students, we think about it's a public interest. And of course, I think it's that we have to think about strategically, and we have to think about things about people, that people put value and people put great efforts, and so on. What is postmodern? I know that Fuad, you are going to leave. That's fine. And Surya, then how long I would continue this presentation? Can you tell me so that I can do this accordingly?
Yes, Prof.
Yes, Professor. Actually, we didn't accept, but you can finish it in 15 minutes later.
Okay, then I'll send another say 15 minutes. Then I'll have a session for questions, right? Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay, no worries. So this the postmodern public administrations against like we talk about we try to remove all kinds of bureaucracy and having democratic organizations in the management culture, that empowerment and participations and having everybody's opinions and come up with it and with the collective decisions. And of course, I think it's the whole idea is to have an optimal decision making. And one thing I didn't mention about that, when it comes to new public management, it's all about competing logics. Like we have, say, profitability issues on one side and community services other side. So it's a competing logics, and businesses, they need to deal with economic resources, and like public sector organizations, they also deal with the societal and society's expectations. So I think they are competing each other, but there are multiple forms of accountability. Public sector agencies must work in such a way that they can have a balance between these competing logics and competing rationalities. So I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation is good governance is very important for any organizations, including public sector. So good governance is about transparency, accountability, openness, and also responsiveness to the society as a whole. And it is also about equity. It's not about the, okay, you have a chief executive officer, you have a CEO, and then there should not be any differentiations in terms of treatment of equity. Everybody has the same sort of right in the public sector field. So equity is also important. And of course, the transparency now becomes part of public sector management culture. So this is again from various researches, and the research has come up with this word cloud about new public management, public theory, democracy, as you can see, auditing. And auditing now becomes like follow the money in the public sector. Currently, I'm working on a paper that instead of looking into value for money, I would rather say follow the money. This is what we have in Australia nowadays. We have Auditor General Office. They don't focus too much on value for money audit. They focus mostly on now how to follow the money. So have a continuous auditing and continuous inspections, continuous kind of transparent mechanism, so that we can follow the money, how governments agencies spend the money. That's also important to look at. So today's public sector, as I say, is a hybrid kind of public sector. Public sector has a profit-oriented focus, because you have to earn money to spend the money. That's this new slogan here: to earn, to spend. So that is one side of logic, and the other side of logic is social impact. So we have now in public sector accounting field that people come up with this hybrid organizations like universities in Australia. It's a hybrid organizations, commercial focus as well as social focus, government funding as well as funding from tuition fees from students. So that public sector becomes now hybrid organizations. And also some private sector, they are also hybrid organization, because they also focus on community and environmental pollutions, all kind of things, similarly for voluntary sector or non-profit organizations. So, and as I said, examples, those are examples. And if you really want to do some research in public sector, think about hybrid nature of public sector, and where they have competing logics and competing values, and how they have balance in terms of accounting and other issues. So accountability, as I said, is very important and fundamental part of governance. that when it comes to governance, that accountability becomes an obvious point, that how we can ensure the accountability. To ensure accountability, we need accounting numbers. So we need budgeting figures, we need performance management framework, so that we can hold one accountable for their own actions and responsibilities. So it's a kind of new and very important mechanisms for public sector organizations. And I know this is very crowded so tables that that also shows that is also part from one of my publications recently I had with my colleagues in I think it's the British Accounting Review, that different forms of accountability. Accountability can be various forms. So that is another, I think it's a new area for research for public sector accounting people, accountability. And you can look at lots of accountability issues. And currently I have also working on a paper on ethical moral accountability. Ethics and moral is very important when it comes to transparency, when it comes to corruptions. If you believe in a particular ethics, if you have believe in a particular moral, then you can control your integrity. So here, I think it's the we look at, say, political accountability, which is obvious for public sector organizations. When it comes to political accountability, like think in Australia, we have any small irregularities, government immediately appoints a Senate inquiry committee. As I mentioned before, it's a live inquiry that the Senate committee comprises of Senate and Parliament members from various parties, not only from the ruling party. So Senate committee asks a lot of questions, live questions. They can ask multiple questions and anytime they want. That's the political accountability. And of course, I think Indonesia also has parliamentary accounts committee. We have in Australia, we have parliamentary accounts committee. That is also part of political accountability. But when it comes to managerial accountability, it's all about internal management. So we have in public sector organizations, having budgeting in place, having accrual accounting, all performance management framework, and so on. So accountability in the context of new public management is all about having focus more on outcomes rather than inputs. This is why the new areas for research, and I have just finished 2 books, editing books. One book was public sector reform and outcome-based approaches for developed economies, and the second one is for developing economies. And I have various chapters from various countries, and in terms of what sort of outcome-based approaches they have in place in their various countries. So the book will come out next year, around March, and will be published by Routledge. And I have this information on my LinkedIn networks, so you will have information about these 2 books. So this is very important, that we need to look at outcomes rather than inputs and outputs. So I will spend another, say, 5-10 minutes about those outcomes approach, and then that will help many of you who would like to embark on any research in this particular new dimensions of public sector. So outcomes, traditionally, remember, then when we had public sector budgeting, we always had a line item budgets. We have inputs, how to spend the money under various headings. And then you ask for government funding. Okay, we want these activities and we want this sort of money. And at the end of the year, then you have to submit a report. How did you spend the money? Any money left must be returned to the government. So people, they always had rush to spend the money. Otherwise, they're going to lose the money, and they might get funding cut for next year. So that was the traditional mentality: spend the money, and as expected, otherwise you're going to lose the fund. Those days are gone in most developed countries, and including some developing countries, that budgeting is not about based on inputs. Budgeting is based on what you really like to achieve out of this particular project. What is the outcome? And like, this, like the example I have given here, like it's like, like in Australia, it's not about having more hospital, more beds, but it's all about quality treatment. So that is the fundamental slogan. Like, in Australia, we have, like, we have speed cameras everywhere. We have security cameras everywhere. Think about the highways, we have a speed camera. So what is the idea? Idea is not to reduce the accident, but it's also ensure that we have quality roads and highways. We have safety community, so that government doesn't have to spend a lot of money for accidents and for the treatments of patients, So it's about, safety and healthy community. So that's the outcome. That really makes a difference, instead of having money right up front without looking into the outcome. So the outcome approach is, as I said, is a new fundamental slogan for public sector organizations, and dealing with the whole system rather than individual elements in isolation. So like it's like if you are in management accounting, I think some of you already have done, like, target costing, target selling price. Like traditionally, we used to we have to have this is our cost, this is our profit, this is our selling price. Those days are gone, because customers are not willing to pay what you ask for. Customers would like to see whether how much you spend, how much you cost to deliver this product, because they have choice, and they have lots of taste and preferences change, and they have lots of options. They can go shop around online and across the world. So things like, government money, you have to deliver, you have to come up with the outcomes first, then you ask for money. So that's the main slogan nowadays in most developing countries. So because of the time, I don't think that I'll cover most of them. So, but like, like in New Zealand, they call it result-based accountability. They also look at the results. They look at the performance and how well they will deliver their products, and they also look at the quality of their services to the community. So New Zealand governments, they call it result-based outcome or result-based accountability, which is equivalent to outcome approach in Australia and other developed countries. Now I also have an example here, like, Scottish experience, that Scotland practice. They have they have this very interesting outcomes, and it's a long list of outcomes. I don't have time to go through them, but the whole idea is to have like better community, better young society, so that they can produce quality citizens, and then that young people who can learn from various experiences. So that is also based on and that Scottish community services. One thing I like to share, this one is I quite like this one, is the another UK government initiatives and for homeless people. So the government comes up with an idea about providing homes for homeless people. So they identify an individual which was homeless, and they provide services to this particular person or individual, and they do a comparative study. What was the position at the beginning when he or she was homeless, and then what is the current and the status after providing housing and accommodation. So they come up with this star, 1 to 5 star, So that is also based on outcome. So this is very unique, very innovative ideas to introduce outcome-based approach in the public sector services. Okay, let me So reflections. So let me finish about this 2-3 minutes. That in my view, that it's a wonderful idea, outcomes approach. And if I look at from accountability management, it is, of course, I think it is very important that we have this outcome focus and we have this strategic, long-term strategic focus, and so we can work backward. Okay, we identify outcome first, then we identify the resources needed for that delivery of outcomes. And then, but from accounting perspective, and I would say it's challenging because you need to have some sort of quantification when it comes to outcomes. How we quantify, it is absolutely impossible to quantify everything. So there is always be some subjective judgment. And when it comes to subjective judgment, then it is all about, say, personal experiences, and then so how you come up with this idea and how you um, develop mechanisms or KPIs for um, allocating limited resources. So there is an accounting issues there, and then I'm not sure how to deal with these accounting issues, but only way we can deal with this issue is now have some kind of balance, like focusing financial and non-financial issues when it comes to deciding on a particular budgeting. And of course, the other challenging issue is like quality and integrity of public spending, and how we can. I think this is a serious issue even in developing countries, but it's not. We are not hiding. I think it's now publicly available. Some developing countries, they are seriously facing this issue, integrity, corruptions, So how we can remove or how we can manage this? I think it's all about is one way you can handle it in a tight control, tight accountability mechanism in place and transparency. And of course, another, like in Indonesia, like if you are a Muslim, you believe in Islam, and you have a belief system. So a belief system is also play a significant role in academic or any integrity or business irregularities. So we need to have some kind of like, it's a combination of ethical accountability and moral accountability. That needs to be looked into this whole idea of developing um, outcome-based approaches or developing, say, like integrated accountability governance model. So I would like to finish up with this question to audience. Think about yourselves. What makes a good outcome statement? When it comes to developing, say, your subject to your student, if you want to teach your student a particular discipline, particular topic, you like to see some kind of outcome from your students. So how do you develop a statement and how you can say this is really a good outcome statement? Think about our students. Say from accounting point of view, we teach our students lots of numbers, and so they can do, if they are very well in numbering, they can get high distinction marks. Or some students like to see that they like to have some kind of deep learning, deep understanding, so that they can take this away from the university's classroom to their practice, so they can apply that deep understanding. So that is, to me, is outcome. So think about what makes a good outcome. And I thank you everyone for listening to my presentations. And as I said, there are a lot of interesting ideas to explore in the public sector. I know Indonesia is very upfront in public sector accounting research. And I think we need more like field-based research, and talking to people individually and collectively, and do some kind of in-depth understanding of this phenomena. I think is that to be really an outcome of our research. Thank you, everyone. Let me see whether I have any chat questions. No, I think okay. Okay.
Still blank, Professor. All right. Thank you. It's very insightful presentation, Professor. And like Professor Zahirul Hoque stated previously, deep understanding. So I'd like to invite you all to, interactively ask question, or you can use this chat box here. Please feel free to ask question, whether it is in Bahasa Indonesia or in English. Well, while we're waiting for the participant for asking us here, I'd like to properly introduce Professor Zahirul Hoque. Please, it's short CV actually, but that short CV is quite long for me. He's our very prominent speaker here, and oh, okay. The operator, please show the Professor Zahirul Hoque CV, please.
I just share this stop.
No, it's okay. The committee going to show the CV. All right. There is a prophet in Indonesia, tak kenal maka tak sayang. In English is more likely, if we don't know well, we cannot get along well. So I'd like to give a proper introduction to Professor Zahirul Hoque. He's our prominent speaker here, but yet very humble professor. He said previously, I'm not that of expert, but look at this CV. Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, education and training. BCom, MCom from University of Dhaka, and then PhD from University of Manchester, 1989 and 1993. Yeah, I don't know whether Professor like football or not, but 1993 is the first time Manchester United won their Premier League title under their legendary manager Alex Ferguson.
Yeah, and I was
right,
there.
and then yeah, and doctoral coursework and dissertation also in management control in public sector. Yeah, that's why he is so expert in this area. And then graduate certificate in higher education from Griffith University. Next slide, please. All right, and the experience, start teaching assistant in University of Manchester. And then as previously mentioned, in 2017, he is the head department of accounting and data analytics, and also professor of management accounting public sector in Lathrop University. Right, I'm going to make it fast. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Education,
we have some questions here. That's
honors, and all right. And let's see the question.
Yeah, so I've got a few questions. I've got Kiki and Debbie raise up hands. So I'll start with questions first. That the question was from Anwash. That is about budgeting, whether it belongs to management discipline or it belongs to, say, accounting. I think it's a good question. I think it's like
all right,
like say, performance management, and whether people say management, people say no. I think performance management is a management discipline topics, but accounting people say, oh, it is our discipline, like a balanced scorecard. Whether it is a management topic or accounting topic, I would say management and accounting, they're interrelated. When it comes to budgeting is about planning, is part of management, coordinations, but accounting job is to quantify them in monetary terms, so quantitative expression. And so budgeting is the process of quantifying future courses of action. So it becomes accounting from that sense. But budgeting is also can be a management tool. So I wouldn't put budgeting only under one category, accounting. It should be both management and accounting category. The second questions that about that many public sector organizations are led by political party people. Is this a profitable thing? Yeah, I think it's again is very important question that it depends on, like in a public sector organization. If it is like in a commercially oriented public sector organization, they do have corporate type management structure, like in a corporate board and audit committee, risk committee. And then of course now in Australia we have, like anything goes wrong, we have a Senate committee, public accounts committee. So every public sector organization, whether it is a commercial or non-commercial, and it is audited by Auditor General's office, and they come up with the report for any irregularities, then they goes to public sector accounts committee. But you're right that many public sector organizations depends on the type of organizations, that if it is a public services organization, of course they are run by um, government servant. But in Australia, I wouldn't say that they are all led by political party people. Of course, some, like in the corporate boards, might be have a political party people, and but in terms of percentage, not that great in Australia. I'm sure, I think is in most developing countries, I would say mostly by political party. Like even like various universities, vice chancellors are appointed by the ruling political party. So that's one thing. And also, Professor, I would like to share about the state of the art and how to arrange it to the design. Thanks. Okay, thank you. There's another question is, I want to ask your opinion about what impact of COVID-19 on public organizations' performance management system and the implications of the digitalization on it. And that's a very important, very interesting question, because COVID-19 has taught us one important thing, that how to survive, how to manage crisis. So it's a health crisis and economic crisis. So public organizations deal with this serious crisis along with private sector organizations. Public organizations heavily impacted because of like fully locked down, partially locked down, because of less activities and on various say community services. But performance management is very important, because the question is how to evaluate performance in terms of crisis, this crisis, unprecedented crisis. So KPIs should be looking into this. You cannot use traditional key performance indicators and in times of this unprecedented crisis. And of course that because of the digitalization, now you can see we deliver almost everything online via Zoom. So digital disruption is important, and that I think one of the important implications for this COVID-19 would be that digitalization would become part of our British culture from now on. So like if from various meetings, think about seminars that like this sort of forum, we can do it now online, and instead of face to face, if it is not possible. But of course we like to have some kind of face to face interaction. But because of this crisis, and government is now trying to doing everything online, universities now also thinking about developing new courses, online courses, So digitalization has huge impact on performance management and public sector organizations. Okay, is aid corporate governance in public organizations similar for corporate governance or specialized in for public sector organizations? I think I think you need to look at the differences between public and private sector, and so when it comes to corporate governance for private sector, it's quite different for corporate governance in and public sector, especially like, if it is specialized public sector, like so aged care facilities, for example, or disability services in by government. So their corporate governance would be quite different. So it has to be more when it comes to like, community or disability services or aged care facilities or home care facilities or government housing. Their corporate governance should be more community oriented, that people from the community should become part of corporate governance as well. Okay, Nenji asked question about so thank you for your kind words. I'm not an expert in public sector. Please let me ask about how to manage accountability for the using of data. There's and that is the sum of the fund, and sometimes it is used fund for the village, and that it could be using for infrastructure in the village. Thank you. I'm not sure about the whole idea of data, but when it comes to managing fund, because some funds for, as you said, the huge fund for the village, it could be using for infrastructure in the village. That is another issue, I think, and when it comes to infrastructure development, what we found in Australia, because some of the fund we get for infrastructure development, I have some reservation about this, that we spend a lot of money for infrastructure development, and then the moment we finish our, let's say, building a huge construction, and then we have lots of facilities, now the sustainability is an issue. So the financial sustainability is an important issue. The later on in the life cycle of that projects. So you need to have some kind of continuous improvement activities and continuous monitoring kind of processes in place, so that we had enough fund to run this infrastructure developed for that particular projects. Okay, a question from Devi. There are several issues in developing countries. Say Indonesia, we have issues in corruptions, bureaucracy, political, lack of risk management. If you want to apply NPL, which one should be prioritized to solve? I think accountability. I would say transparency and accountability. We need to have some kind of mechanisms that which can be used to ensure that we have transparent governance, and we had informations, and when it comes to transparent, that you provide informations openly to the public and people, and we have outcomes, and not only focusing on political accountability, it should be focused on more managerial accountability as well. So how to ensure efficient and effectiveness in a particular projects. And I know that as I said in my presentation, corruption we cannot eliminate fully. So we have to increase our individual awareness about morals and ethics obligations. So you cannot avoid personal accountability. So personal accountability and formal accountability should have some kind of integration there. So those integration is important to be able to have a sustainable governance model for organizations. Question from Novena: in today's digital world, what measures of accountability is the most relevant and reliable in public organization? As I said in my last comment, that you have to have some kind of integrated accountability model, like have a balancing, not focusing too much on political accountability, not focusing too much on managerial accountability. So it should be a combination of formal accountability and personal accountability. And of course, I think because of the e-governance, I think it's if you can make information available for everyone, that would ensure good governance and good accountability. And information must be reliable. So question from Agung Sen. Thank you for Professor. Okay, my question is, in public sector organization, how is the best way to make sure that government funding expenses for special program resulted the optimal output or outcome? I think it's the monitoring. Is like continuous monitoring process should be in place instead of having end of the project monitoring reporting. It's a continuous reporting and also integrated reporting. Say you have identified the outcomes and identified the outputs, and then have them continuously assessed and then take corrective actions. Okay, question from Nanji. Ask about how to manage accountability for the using of that. I think that's the already answered. Okay, question from Hilda. Hilda, sorry about that.
Hilda, Professor.
Hilda.
Yeah.
Sometimes organizations' culture are more tight than how accountability should be. Let's say formally the organization has good SOP or any procedures have documented well, but they fail to apply it due to bad habit or, yeah, I think that's the cultural attitude. And I think it's all about how you ensure that values, individual values and collective values in the organizations. And it's documentation, of course, I think is important, but again, the transparency important, because we need to have some kind of like, continuous training and educational sort of workshops or forum, and so that we can share our experience, then we can try to get rid of our bad habit or bad culture, so that's the continuous, some kind of, informal and social interactions about issues and discuss in a forum. Excuse me. Question from Kiki. It is an honor to get. Thank you. Just your presentation. How would you evaluate the implementation of public sector reform in Indonesia? Do you think it is considering the split of? Yeah, I think it's so far I know that I get lots of submissions from Indonesia for my journal of accounting and organizational change, and I think it's yeah. I know that Indonesia has introduced accrual accounting, and now you are in the also introducing outcome framework. I would say rather, yeah, they are consistent with Western developed countries, but as I said before, it needs to be like, of course, the well documentation is one thing, is in also like, enforcement. So what we say from accounting point of view, decoupling. So you have a formal system, but you have to let people that, okay, we have this formality, but you need to practice them. So execution and also continuous monitoring, that would be important. Otherwise, we all have, say, long documentation about all, say, 100 outcome statement, but are they really achievable? Are they really in practice in place? That needs to be looked at. So what sort of challenges that Indonesia will face needs to improve in order to achieve the ends of public sector reform? I think it's the first thing is the government support is needed, or also community awareness. You have to improve the communication strategy between real people and the government bureaucracy. So communication is to be well applied to the people who are the service users. And then, of course, otherwise, it will all be finished with documentation. That is really challenge. And of course, I think it's the, as I said, corruption and integrity, and then organizational culture, that needs to be looked at when it comes to deciding on the outcomes or effectiveness of public sector reform. Question from Arun, and I'm interested in research on non-government organization. In my opinion, NGOs have similar compatible in the year. And of course, is how far the research on public sector could be relevant for NGO sectors. What are the basic difference between the accountability on NGOs compared to public? I think that the basic difference is if you look at non-government organizations, and non-government organizations have, like if I think about as a charity, for example, so that the basic difference is funders, like sources of fund. Some NGOs, they have this funding from particular community or funding from, say, World Bank or IMF or Asian Development Bank. And so their corporate governance and reporting would be quite different from traditional public sector organizations. But you can apply similar sort of new public management concept to non-government organization when it comes to developing accountability mechanisms, like also like governance model, like if you want to say introduce like a risk assessment committee or budgeting committee or audit committee, and that the one obvious difference would be you need to have some kind of representations from people who are the users of these services. So having people from the users on the corporate board would be an ideal situation for NGOs accountability, which cannot be possible for public sector accountability and governance. So there is slight differences, but concepts can be applied equally to non-government organizations as well. Okay, question from Navita regarding the outcome-based concepts. Show outcome first, then ask for the money. I read that sometimes Scandinavian countries are said to be the countries with the highest happiness index and quality of life in the world. That people are willing to pay taxes even though the nominal is high. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, our people are reluctant to pay tax because they don't believe in government work programs, which are considered only false promises. What do you think about this effective way to? That's a good question. Public trust. I think this is why, like even like I think in Scandinavian country like Finland, Sweden, they're the happiest people. Of course, I think because they pay a lot of taxes. Even in Australia, we pay a lot of taxes. Like as an university professor, I pay almost 48% tax.
Yeah.
On top of my, say, private insurance and all kind of insurance, and so we also pay tax on our superannuation pension money, because money we're going to receive in the future, but we are paying tax now. So it's a kind of government. Of course, I think public trust is important. It's government responsibility to earn that kind of public trust. I tell you what, one way I think government can have public trust. One example I can tell you from Australia, like say, so when I pay tax, and then I get an invoice from the, say, we have Australian taxation office. So they send an invoice to every taxpayer. So if I say paid, say, $50,000 tax, so I get an invoice, how they spend $50,000 from me. So they have a long list of, say, activities, and how they spend my money to deliver those services. So that's the invoice, So that's, I think, you get you trust government. Okay, government is transparent how they spend your tax. So I don't know about Indonesia, whether you have that similar sort of practice. So that is a wonderful way to have public trust, that people trust you, that you know how they spend your money. In your book, there is a material on customer profitability analysis. How is it applied the public sector? Yeah, I think it's in the public sector. Yeah, I think public sector, you can use this customer profitability analysis, like, they're like community satisfaction. Or in terms of like if you deliver services to community from government point of view, like, various groups of community, various groups of people, like aged care, young people, youth allowances, so you can see how much government spend the money to various communities. Then you can say, okay, who are the highest users of government money? Like that can be also used, that when it comes to think about university sector, if you use your customers, then you can say domestic students, international students. Within domestic students, you can have a geographical, country-wise analysis. So you can see your customers. So it can be applied to any government agencies as well. Think about local city councils, who are the rates payers and taxpayers, and then who gets the services from the city council or municipalities. Okay, and Nicholas, what is the role of the government and the accounting sector in restoring the economy of a country while still paying attention to the welfare of the community due to the current pandemic? Yeah, I think it's very important questions, that like other countries in Australia, governments spending a lot of money to save jobs, to keep people in their businesses, and then on the other side, and also paying people for their welfare benefits, like government is not paying youth allowances, unemployment benefits. Like think about the COVID-19 crisis. The moment people lose their job in Australia, immediately they start getting government unemployment benefits. So government has in a serious financial crisis now in Australia. On the one side, job losses, other side, unemployment benefits. So you can see, and also that pay cut, like in most universities in Australia, we are now having pay cuts, say 10%, 20% pay cut. So people who get significant pay cuts and low salary, they get also government support from low wages, low salaries. So you can see it's very difficult for government, and also like various like treasury, finance ministry, to restore the whole economy. I think it's we will end up with, like in Australia, other countries, we will end up with paying more taxes post COVID-19, because government is okay, we have to recover money. So people who are the highest earner, they have to pay more taxes in the future. And this is how we can restore the economy. Otherwise, I think it would be disaster for the whole global country. Okay, so almost last questions.
I think the last question is for the organizing committee. She
Okay.
asked the certificate. All right. Any more question? We still have time until 11. Is there any more questions from the audience? All right. Professor, previously you mentioned competing logic and then hybrid organization. It sounds to me like institutional theory. Is that something to do with institutional theory? The concept of competing logic and hybrid?
Yeah, I think it's there. You're right that in institutional theory, scholars, they recently come up with this idea, competing logics, like traditional institution theory say one is the compliance. Okay, organizations must conform with these particular rules and regulations. That's the one logic. That's the compliance logic. And the second logic, that like when it comes to like organizational effectiveness, like managerial accountability, that governments, okay, you have to perform well, you have to spend the money effectively. So it comes to like management efficiency and more effectiveness kind of things. So it's a different logics.
Yeah.
So that is because they are competing. One is you have to comply, as well as you also have to comply internal efficiency issues. So they are competing. So these are the two kind of institutional issues. One is that macro level logic, other one is the micro level in institutions. So then it becomes part of institutional theory. Look, instead of looking into traditional compliance issue, you need to look at also internal micro level dynamics, and then they become competing. So it is the recent trends in institutional theory research that institutional logics.
Well, thank you for the explanation. Well, anyone? Are there any more questions? The last one is not question, Professor.
Yeah.
It's kind of request from Januar. Professor, I want to see your smile.
Thank you. Yes, so look, I think it's we all like to smile, but you know, things are nowadays. So we are in a fully lockdown. I don't know about Indonesia. So from end of March until today, and I haven't seen my university office. And until last week, we were able to go only 5 kilometers to buy our groceries.
Yeah.
From we have now it increased to 25 kilometers.
Yeah.
So we cannot visit any relatives. So, but I'm trying to be on a smile face. But thank you for that. I think we need to smile. You know, that's important.
Yes, I think this situation is quite similar in here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not significantly dropped the patient of COVID-19, but we start new normal because of the economic condition. Without economic activities, I think because government cannot 100% guarantee our living, so we call it new normal. But I think people still afraid of COVID-19 because the case is not significantly dropped yet. Yeah, we really do hope start in November the government start gradually providing vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine from we Indonesia buy from China.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think one thing I learned that I think we have to live with this virus. I don't know for how long, but the sooner or later, I think we have to, like any other influenza, we have to say, okay, some people will die and some people survive. Those are strong and those are lucky. And as a Muslim, we believe in something, you know. So if Allah takes from, you know.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree because our faiths play important things to cope with stress of pandemic.
Yeah.
Well, if there's no more questions, I'd like to conclude our forum today. Yeah, finally we come to the end of this forum. I would like to say thanks again for our honorable speakers, Professor Zahirul Hoque, for the informative, interesting, and insightful presentation. And to all audience, thank you for your active participation. Hopefully, this presentation will be beneficial for everybody. And once again, thank you, Professor. And good afternoon. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, everyone. Assalamualaikum. If you want any help, just drop me an emails and I'll be happy to respond to any other question. Then I really enjoyed your participation and enjoyed your questions. You have asked a lot of questions, which are very interesting, and hope to see you in the future. Thank you, everyone. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. I think there is a closing statement from the our head of accounting program.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Pak Agung.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Surya. Thank you, Professor Zahirul Hoque, for your presentation and also your insight to us. I believe that your presentation and insight very beneficial for us. And also thanks Dr. Surya for leading the discussions. So participants can enjoy this session. Okay, and for participant, thank you for joining this accounting forum, this series. And I remind you that you have to fill out the process for the session, so you will be eligible for a certificate. Okay, again, thank you for joining with us in this accounting forum, and I hope this forum benefit for us. Okay, thank you, and time back to Brenda.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Brenda, do you hear my voice?
Okay, sorry, my mic is not working before. Okay. Thank you, Professor Hoque, for such a valuable and useful material, and also thank you, Dr. Surya Raharja, for being our moderator today. And also thank you, Dr. Agung Juliarto, for the closing statement. And ladies and gentlemen, from the discussion earlier, it is hoped that it can expand our knowledge of achieving objectives in performance management, especially to public sector organizations. And we can focus on the outcomes. And also, it is to remind us to be more aware about the issues and challenges that are being dealt with now. And now we are at the end of the seminar. I, on behalf of the Accounting Firm Committee, would like to thank everyone involved, including all participants that have taken this seminar very well. And once again, I would like to thank our special guest speaker, Professor Hoque, and our honorable moderator, Dr. Surya Raharja, and also Dr. Fuad and Dr. Agung Juliarto. And before ending up the seminar, I would like to inform that the post-test has been published in the meeting chat, and it should be noted that only participants who get score with a minimum of 50 will receive the certificate, and with a processing time of 30 minutes. So please remind that. And thank you all for your cooperation. I am Brenda as the Master of Ceremony of today's seminar. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, Brenda. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Surya, and thanks, Professor Agung. Thank you so much.
Yeah, hopefully after the pandemic, we can invite you again so we can see face to face and show you our university and our city here, Professor.
I think,
inshallah, hope to see you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
thank you.
Many students interested in your field, for especially from, I think, from postgraduate student. Okay, many of the research regarding public sector. So I think you will give them inspiration or very valuable insight. Okay. Thank you. And
thank you. So I'll be happy to help you with any way. So please let's be in touch, and probably hope to see you again in the.
And I'm sorry, Dr. Fuad can can join in the end of the session, because now the out of city in Surabaya, so we can wait until end of this seminar.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. Stay
Thank you.
healthy and happy.
Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Bye.